St. George. I'm really excited about this one. Thanks for being on, Freddie.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, this is a special one, an interesting one. I'm really excited. Usually, I kind of do a super deep dive and try to find some questions or just insight before I sit down and chat with you. But because this one was super interesting to me, I kind of didn't do a whole lot of that because I want to hear the story and I want to like kind of be intrigued as we go along and kind of stay curious, if you will. So again, thank you for being on. And I think the first question I typically always ask is, to kind of get the ball rolling is, how did you get into minis? Where did your background of minis kind of go into? And then for those that don't know, we'll jump into the Italian job. That's the main subject, I think, of the story here. So, but let's jump into kind of where you came about minis.
I was born in 1969, Mike, so you're going to say you don't look it, but that is the truth. And I was about 10 or 11, and we had one of those old-fashioned, I think you call them VHS, video recorders in the UK. And for one summer holiday, we had 6 weeks of summer holiday. My sister and I, we recorded a film called The Italian Job. We didn't really understand it because it was full of nuances that as adults we really understand. But at the time, it was just a funny kind of crime caper. A load of Brits go to Italy, steal gold, and they escape from Turin in these minis. And we loved it. And that's where my introduction really to minis, I must have been 10 or 11, I think. So the film was relatively new. It was only about 10 or 11 years old. Then when I was 16, my father said to me that a friend of his had a son at university near us, and he'd had a Mini that he just abandoned. He'd left university, he'd abandoned this Mini there, and this friend had said to my dad, "Do you want it?" And he thought it'd be a great project car for me to get invited to get involved in Minis with. So we went and collected it with a trailer. We brought it home. Everything was seized up, rusted like you wouldn't believe. We live on the south coast of England. We get a lot of salt air off the sea from the channel. So kind of 70s minis, 80s minis in those days, they didn't last very long because the salt air was corrosive. So I brought it home and I just did everything to it. Mike, we stripped the engine down. I bought a Haynes manual. Any die-hard mini man has a Haynes manual in their garage, and that kind of gives you the A to Z
Yep.
of how to do everything. And there was no YouTube in those days, Mike. So we didn't have there wasn't even any internet, so there was no way of kind of going and saying, how do I bleed the brakes on a mini? So it really was from the absolute bottom to the top. I had a friend that was really good at welding, and he came and helped me with some things. The sills, floor was shot, the floor was completely gone. We changed doors. It was one of those multicoloured minis, as you imagine. Yeah, different colour. Had a brown door on one side and a yellow door on another side. And it was a teal blue mini. The interior was in great condition. That was about the only thing. It was a Mini 850 with that really lovely long dog leg gear stick, and I got it started. And I would drive it up and down our drive. I got up to third gear before I had to really hit the brakes, or I would hit the garage. So I'd reverse it to the bottom of the drive, and then this 16 years of age, and I honed my skills of my bad skills at driving then. But I absolutely fell in love with the car, and then after I've always had minis. So now fast forward, I'm 54 this year, and I've got a 1974 Innocenti Mini Cooper in my garage, which is my absolute pride and joy. After my children, probably the most the one thing I'm kind of proudest of, to be fair. So an Italian-made German export model 74 Innocenti Cooper.
Fantastic. I guess it's right on par for kind of what we're going to get into to have the Innocenti, but yeah, they're pretty unique, for the layman it kind of looks pretty standard mini, but you kind of get into it and it starts to little Italian twists to it, right?
My family's so I've got a very Anglo-Saxon name, St George, but my mother is Neapolitan. So
Okay.
I've got a very heavy Italian influence. So I went to university in Italy. I always speaking Italian with her. So for me, if I was having a car, it would have to be, and it really is for me the pinnacle of the classic Mini. And as you say, there's lots of different little tiny touches that are very Italian. Door cappings in stainless steel. The quarter lights are still there. Things that's like the dashboard is totally different. The interior is totally different. The motor steering wheel. Yeah, just all the little things that are nice. I've got first sats, the original wheels, and and I've got another set of Cooper of mini lights, just in Italian mini lights, obviously, just in case. But it's got the British Leyland badges. It's got the export badge. So yeah, it turns heads. It's the only thing that's not original. The previous owner put in a full length sunroof. And I know you in California, Mike, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Sun. We don't get a lot of sun in the UK, and so having a sunroof is kind of like a bit surplus to requirements. But on the very rare days when it's sunny, it's a full length of Basto. Just whack it back, and it's like the world has come into the car as well. But it's
Yeah.
like an oven on a hot day. Heater doesn't work, and when it does, it's just boiling hot. And when I need it to be cold, it's boiling hot. So yeah, it's smells of petrol. When it rains, I can see the water coming in. That kind of thing. It's all the classic things that we love about the minis, and yeah, just great. When I go around a corner fast, I can see my wing mirror petrol leaking out of the fuel tank because it's just a Monza style classic Innocenti cat. So you can
Right.
see it kind of fly. And it's so expensive fuel in this country. So we hate to do that, but it's still too much fun to throw it around a corner. So it's yeah, just never grow up with minis, do you? Really?
No, no, not at all. And I think that's part of the charm that they kind of provide to us. Well, that's fantastic. I love that story, and it's always good to kind of hear that background and know that you truly, you're a mini guy from the beginning. And so, I really want to get into this about the Italian job. I know you have roots in Italy, and you kind of just mentioned that. I'm half Italian myself, so I'm really curious about this, and this sounds like something I definitely would like to do one day, bucket list. But for those that don't know, and for my own benefit, can you kind of explain what the Italian Job event is, and then we'll kind of get into, what inspired you to do it and all of that.
It's a simple. It started off as a very simple motoring event. We were going to go to Italy and back, and we were going to be fundraising for children's charities, and that's basically what we do and what we've done since 1990, which was the first Italian job. So we just a group of friends. We got together in a restaurant in Hove. It was an Italian restaurant, of course. Too much vino, too much pizza, and then there was limoncello, and then it was sambuca, and everything Italian came out. And we got to do something to kind of do a kind of a fundraising event this year. So we decided on the Italian job. I was at the university in the north of Italy, in Trento, in the Dolomites, beautiful part of Italy, not very well known in the UK. And so I sent some faxes. That's how long ago it was, Mike. We didn't have emails. It wasn't. We sent a fax to my old. I know you laugh, but it's exactly how it was. And a couple of days later, I got a fax
Yeah,
back and said,
yeah.
"Yeah, yeah, we'd love to welcome you and your friends to Trento to play and have some fun." And we got in touch with a couple of UK-based children's charities and said we were doing this thing. It's a bit of a challenge because it was about 2,500 to 3,000 miles, and we'd set ourselves 72 hours to do it from start to finish. And we were trying to find local businesses and companies to sponsor us and support us. And that first year, we made the mistake of sending a press release to a magazine, and that magazine ran this press release, and it just had our telephone number because, of course, it's telephone and fax, no emails. And we got faxes and telephone calls and personal visits from people in our office to say, "Can we come? Can we come?" So we really, in a hurried way, cobbled together an entry pack, an entry form. We came up with some rules. We told people what they had to fundraise, etc. And we had 55 cars that first year. We raised seventy
Wow.
thousand pounds. Yeah, no, it was,
Wow.
and it was emotional when we got to in Italy. We just had it was kind of like treasure hunts really. Every day, or 2 days, we'd drive out, and at various points, the minis, the two groups would be split, would cross, and the whole of the city of Trento and the region of Trentino in the Alto Adige in the northeast of Italy were amazing. But it was really emotional to see the fruits of probably 10 months worth of work come together that first year. And then the fundraising money started coming in, and it was incredible. It was first year was £70,000. And we had no intention of doing it again, but we then got inundated with even more requests to do it again. And that's kind of how it was. It's that kind of expression of little acorns do oak trees grow, the snowball rolling and just getting bigger and bigger and fatter and fatter. and
Yeah.
it's given us 30 years of fun, really tremendous fun. Met some amazing people and done some amazing things.
It's amazing. And like when I first started reading about it, I was like, man, it's been going on for a long time, and it's not like a little event, like you said. You're crossing 2,000 to 3,000 miles, and it's week. Correct me if I'm wrong, week or more per kind of trip, and it's like this, pretty big event, and it seems like it pretty much started like that. It wasn't like it. Obviously, it's grown, and so how's it kind of grown from that first one till now, and what kind of changes has it kind of um, developed over the time?
I mean, I love my classic Mini. Of course, in 2001 we started taking the modern Mini, but it's always a challenge driving such a long distance in a classic Mini. And as I get
Yeah.
older, even an hour, 2 hours in my car now, I know I feel it in my back and my neck, and I get out because the seats in my Mini are, as they should be, completely useless in terms of support in any part that you need it. But and this is an old man speaking now. But when I was 18, this is 19, it was I'd drive for days with no problem. But nowadays we have things like sat nav, GPS. We didn't have that stuff when we started. We would
Right.
literally, Mike, we'd give you a piece of paper that said this is the hotel in this city in Italy. There'd be a map of the outline of Italy, a little dot saying where this town was, and then there may be like the name of the road. And it was really, I mean, how we found these places. I remember once driving around Munich, but look, it seemed like hours, and I could see the hotel. I just couldn't find the way to get to it. I just couldn't see it. And there's no voice in the car saying, at the next junction, turn left or do a U turn when you can. It was just purely, yeah. So sat nav has made a huge difference. When in the early days, we'd leave, and I used post-it notes on the dashboard of my Mini, and the first one would say from Calais, drive towards A26 Paris. Then you would remove that, and it would say follow for Lyon. Remove that. Follow for Chambry. Remove that. Over the, that's how it was. And I mean, if you missed something, it was hours. If you missed a junction or a turning, hours to find your way back.
Oh yeah.
I had no lights no interior light to speak of in any self-respecting Mini, classic Mini. So, and no phones with a torch. So we'd have a torch, but we'd have to look at the map and interact. And it was just so much fun. And we slept nights in Minis because we couldn't get to a hotel. So the sat nav makes a massive difference, as does communication, mobile phones, cell phones. We never had
Right.
those in the early days. So we'd have cars that would break down somewhere, say 3 hours from the start point, and they would phone the hotel. The hotel would then send somebody to where we were and say, Mike has phoned. He's stuck in Innsbruck, but he's working his way down. And one time we had a couple of guys who were amazing, really were heroes. They had actually broken down in Innsbruck. We were just 3 hours from Trento. And the message we got was they're coming, but they've only got first and second gear. Now, this is 3 hours normal motorway driving. So that's in the UK, 70 miles an hour. In Europe, 70 miles an hour, 120, 130 kilometers an hour. But my word, can you imagine 5 hours, 6 hours driving in first and second gear, often on the
Oof.
hard shoulder of the motorway, getting stopped every, I don't know how often by the police in Austria, then in Italy. What are you doing? And they were limping on, and they got there. And in the end, one guy, Bruce, I remember absolutely like it was yesterday. He got it. And he said, "Just get me a bloody beer." His mind must have been frazzled with the 6 hours in second gear. I mean, that's just nuts. That's
Rough.
how it was. It was, yeah, man. It
Rough.
was. It was. And then other times we had one car arrived and they'd been driving for 4 hours with their windscreen wipers permanently on. They obviously pulled them away from the windscreen, but they would just the whole way. So yeah, just or other times windows that wouldn't wind up, so they'd arrive. They'd had tape to try and hold it together through thunderstorms to get there. So yeah, and I mean,
Yeah.
last story on this.
That.
The last time we went was 2019. We drove to the Nurburgring, which is a fantastic circuit. And we had a 61 Cooper, and we got a message to say that their windscreen had shattered. It wasn't laminated; it shattered, but it was still holding together. And it was night time, so we're trying to crack on to get to the hotel. And you can imagine the light refracting as it came in through all these thousands of different splinters in the glass. They stopped for fuel
Right.
about 3 kilometres from the hotel, and one of them got back in and closed the door slightly too hard because then all the glass fell out. and
Oh
it
no.
absolutely rained like there's no tomorrow. And they got there looking like they'd been in the shower. We, in the meantime, knew we were going to need to find some glass, and we phoned International Mini Rescue, who you probably know of. Phone. We got in touch online. He put in touch with the guy that was about 10 clicks from where we were, who actually had a piece of a '61 Cooper windscreen. He brought it along,
Wow.
and I think I would have paid him with my life for that piece of glass. And he asked for €25, which is about £20. I don't know what that's in. We're talking
Yeah.
nothing, And I was
Yeah,
wow.
nothing.
But it got them back. Then our service crew fitted that glass, and the next day they were good as gold. But they had a few
That's
beers in the bar, then.
that's
Yeah.
amazing. I did a I hope to do it again this year, a rally here in United States, and I did about 3,000 miles to get there and do the rally and come back around. Excuse me. And it was a ton of classic cars, and there was an old Alpha, probably 60s, and on the way to the rally, they come from all over. I forget where he's at. He might be in California as well. I could be completely wrong, but neither here nor there. His windscreen blew out on the freeway, and it was him and his buddy, his co-pilot, and that they weren't terribly far from home, but they're like, no, we're doing it. So they couldn't find a '60s windscreen on the way, so they went to Walmart, which is like do you guys have Walmart in UK?
Love it. Yeah, it's famous here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would imagine that Walmart's global, but they went to Walmart and they got gloves and like motorcycle helmets with the visors, and they just did the whole rally without a windscreen. It was epic. That just kind of reminded me of that. But yeah, that's
Hopefully.
yeah, it was crazy. They were definitely the heroes of the trip. But yeah, I
Do
wanna
yeah,
go,
sorry.
go. No, go for it. Go for it.
Teams do the Italian job in Mokes before. So the original Moke, no heater in the original Mini Moke,
Well, yeah.
canvas sides and over the Dolomites. And because they're kind of like mad dogs in Englishmen, they go over the top of the passes rather than through the lovely tunnels that the French and the Swiss have created for us. So they go way high. Cars start kind of coughing and spluttering because there's no oxygen up there. And they must be absolutely freezing, Mike, because they've got kind of like aviator coats on, crash helmets with goggles. So cold, but yeah, a lot of fun to do it in a moat. But I think the moat for me is more kind of California, Portugal kind of
Yeah.
climate rather than up in the mountains. Yeah, so
Yeah, for sure. I know. I think I was just talking about it last time. I bucket list for sure as a moke here in Southern California, cruising the PCH by the beach would be epic.
it's an amazing thing. I think.
Yeah. I want to ask you, because it's such a long trip. I guess from the start in the early '90s to where you are now. How do you plan the route? Is there just kind of designated spots that you want to hit, and everyone can kind of go however they want and explore however they want, or did you pick certain areas, certain towns, certain roads that you kind of want to create this experience?
Really intrepid, they want to do their thing, they can definitely go and do their own thing, and then join us at the start line. We now start in Imola in Emilia Romagna, so where
Oh,
the F1, the Italian F1 takes place, or the San Marino Grand Prix takes place. But otherwise, for some people, and of course, must remember, Mike, that they drive on the wrong side of the road in continental Europe to the way we drive in the UK. So,
right.
we get some a bit kind of nervous about driving. So we have a service van route. So we have our service van full of spares, full of tools, and two very well equipped and well fed mechanics because we need to keep them happy. And we set daily distances. So, for example, the first day this year is going to be from Calais, which is northern France, to the Nurburgring, probably about 4.5 hours driving. The day after that, down to Munich, and then from Munich into Italy and Imola. We always try and find places that've got some kind of motoring heritage or some connection with cars, and we just do it in small bite sizes this time. But early on in the early days, we used to. There's an expression in England we use: health and safety. It's gone crazy. Everybody's safeguarding our interests and our safety. We can't walk here because it's dangerous. So, but health and safety back in the early '90s wasn't what it was today. So we would think nothing of a 9, 10 hour drive from the start to the finish, and
Right.
that even that is even as a young man, that was a tiring, hard slog. 10 hours behind the wheel of a Mini, um, 4 gears, classic, obviously, and revving at 3.5 constantly. Um, no point having any music, no point having any conversation because it's impossible. So, but now we're a
Yeah.
little bit more, as we get older, we get a bit more sedate and keep those distances a little bit more manageable. But credit to you for driving 3,000 miles to the start of a rally in a classic Mini as well. That's the kind of what we do on the whole Italian job. That's something.
Yeah, it was a trek for sure, but it was worth it. There's some amazing roads in the United States, and yeah, it was just an experience for sure. It's something about exploring by yourself in a classic car, and fixing it on the side of the road is just something I'll never forget.
Guess in the states because everything's so big and the roads are so big in the states, aren't they? And vehicles are big in the states. When you're in your Mini, see here, you pass a big truck, a lorry on the motor, and you think, wow, that's huge. But that's nothing, is it? I mean, and these cars are so tiny and they look so vulnerable, but they really
Yeah,
are. I think they're real hooligans. They really are proper little kind of like beefed up on the Minis, I
yeah,
think they. I mean, they're the kind of the quiet guy in the pub you don't want to get into an argument with is a classic Mini because you just don't know.
yeah.
That's how I look at it, and I
I
think they're not going to mess with me and my Mini. So yeah, it's and I just can't stop smiling when I'm driving. It's people let you out of junctions when you're in your Mini. I think is that the same for you in the States? They look at you with the kind of affection and it's just sweet.
Oh yeah, I mean here. Okay, California, you probably see them more than other places, but not they're not common. So a lot of people don't even know what they are, and they're like, "What the hell?" So I get a lot of is it a Fiat? For some reason, they know what the Fiat 500 is over a Mini, but yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of jump to what inspired you to kind of create the Italian job? I know you said you're kind of in an Italian restaurant at the time and talking about, but what inspired you to kind of collaborate between your love of minis and the cause of helping children and fundraising for something like that?
I even early on in my business life, I've been in business for myself, so I had the time and the ability to dedicate time outside of business to other interests. And I've got friends from university that were big into golf, or they were big into fishing, or they were big into kayaking and adventure holidays. I didn't do any of that. I just kind of liked my minis and felt that we had an opportunity to do something a bit special. And with the connections that we have, and it's me and my mother, who's now 90. And where are your family from in Italy,
Wow.
Mike? Whereabouts?
Naples and Sicily.
Neapolitan as well. So we share that heritage, and you know, all elderly Italian women, certainly from the south of Italy, are just formidable. They are absolutely fierce and so powerful. And she's been the driving force behind the Italian job for much of the last 30 years. So it was the two of us, and we just said we wanted. I was working with her in business, and then have taken over the business and expanded into many other things. But I had the time and the ability and the desire to do something and make a difference. And it's all an accident. We really didn't know it was going to be such a huge fundraising success. I mean, in the 30 years, we've raised over £3 million and donated £3 million to children's charities. So that's made a big difference to the lives of so many. And the charity that we support now is Buttle, and it's a UK charity. They give grants to families in crisis, and they make immediate differences and changes and improvements to the lives of so many children. And that's through us having a good time and organising this thing called the Italian Job. So, I mean, Mike, I play with minis, drive to Italy, eat Italian food, drink Italian wine. Um, I don't know what there isn't to love. It's just amazing, and we fundraise along the way. And every year I do my fundraising. We set a target for each car to try and hit because we think that way we can kind of say to the charity, this what we think we're going to raise X £100,000 this year, and that's really encouraging and that gives us a target to go for as well. But I've done parachute
Right.
jumps, I've done silly endurance events, I've shaved my beard. You're a beard wearer as well. You and I both know there's nothing worse than having to start again because we've shaved the beard. But we do all those things, it's just a sense of we have the ability to make a small difference, and we choose to do it, and we do it with our minis, and love doing it.
I love that. It's such a great thing, and it's inspiring because I've been kind of tossing around. Well, okay, take this podcast for example. I started this. I was thinking maybe I'll start some sort of like car event or something small, but kind of incorporating it with such a good cause. I feel like that will bring a lot of people, and it's just you're not just doing it to do it. It's definitely making a change in the world, and I really like that about this because it's such a cool event. But it's not just another event out there. It's very special, and I really like that. And so I commend you for that and for doing it for so long. It's amazing.
But to tell you a very very quick story. We've had teams from the States before. We've had teams from Australia, all European. We had a team from Japan in the early '90s, and the Japanese team. The guy was called
Wow.
Ichiro. He was amazing, and he was. This is before digital phones, before phone cameras. Before digital cameras or phones with cameras. He was prolific. He'd photographed so many things, and his English was very bad, but much better than my Japanese. And we managed to communicate through our love of the Mini and talking about. And he had a beautiful Mini that he had shipped over to the UK for the event. Anyway, he did the Italian job for 2 years. And then in '95, there was a terrible earthquake in Japan, the Kobe earthquake, and it was
Hmm.
devastating. And he asked our permission if he could organise an event in Japan called the Kobe job, basing it really on our Italian job. And we were absolutely honoured, Mike, to say for 100%, whatever we can do to help and support. And he sent us a banner that he had signed by all the teams that had taken part in his Kobe job, and they fundraised with their minis in Japan for the victims of the earthquake in '95,
Wow.
on an evolution of the Italian job idea. So that's stuff that makes us really really proud and really 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 happy. It was really touching.
Wow, I love that. That's, such a great idea, and, maybe it'll spark other, there's always sort of kind of events that happen throughout the world, and, it blows my mind every time I do one of these podcasts or, people messaging me on Instagram how many minis or even looking at the metrics for this podcast, there's so many countries that are listening, and it's like wow, that's really cool to hear that how it kind of brings everyone together, and dropping it into another country like that for another good cause. I really love that.
One last story. Every year on the event, we have an auction. So we ask all our teams to bring along stuff. It could be mini
Hmm.
related, it could be non mini related, and we just do this really improvised auction. We take over a hotel one evening, and one year we were in Florence, and we were doing it in the restaurant area of this hotel. And there was again some Japanese tourists, and I forget the guy's name, but the one guy apparently I didn't know was a very well known Japanese cartoonist.
Oh,
And that kind of that again, I'm not an expert, but that style of
anime.
Japanese anime.
Yeah.
And he very quickly sat down. He was listening, and he did an illustration, did a cartoon, and sent somebody over to us and said, "Can you auction this?" He was giving it to us and signed it, and we raised
Wow.
money for the Italian job with this guy's drawing as well on the night, and it was just fantastic. So yeah,
Wow.
it's and I think that there's a real sense of you know this as a mini man. There's a real sense of community in the mini world, and I'm pleased that that's kind of carried over to the modern mini as well. And that sense of community, all we do is kind of like amplify that with the Italian job. And we have a real family. It's kind of the event and the participants that come on the Italian job. I think they kind of feel they really are, belonging to a family, a group of a community of people, like-minded, and yeah, and I just love that. And but again, 100%, it's not all petrol heads, people telling you how to strip a gearbox down and everything. I mean, because that would be, even for me who loves that would be a little bit excessive, all the time, kind of. Let's talk about the wonderful views today, or the castles that we've been to. I mean, we're taking our cars on the Italian job onto Fiorano, which is Ferrari's test track at Maranello. in 2005 who got onto the track, which is where they test
Wow.
all their road and race cars. Up on
Wow.
Lingotto, up on the rooftop test track in Turin for many years, around Imola F1 circuit, around Monza F1 circuit, and they opened the old part of Monza circuit for us, the
Wow.
Sopraelevata, the bank circuit. And that's because
Yeah.
I think my mum goes in and bullies them and says, and Italian mums, when they start talking with their hands, and
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
we're so privileged to do so many amazing things. We have a police escort in Turin. We had a police escort through Rome, which was crazy. Have you ever driven in Rome, Mike? If you haven't, you must because it's an experience. But we drove under police escort. It was the hairiest and scariest thing I think we've ever done. Just the most amazing thing. Just
Well,
fantastic.
yeah,
Really.
I've been to Italy a couple times, but when I was much younger, so I never personally drove in Rome, but I've been driven around, and yeah, I can only imagine. There's a lot of things mini related. Man, I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. That have kind of sparked my interest to get back over to the UK, to Italy, and all of these other countries. It's just there's so many cool events. I really want to go to Japan as well, and I feel like there's tons of events that, and it's time to explore. When you're a kid, you kind of want things, and as I get older, I want memories, and I truly have the community of Mini. I feel like is bringing that to me, and this is just it's getting me hyped up. Like I want to do this. I want to do the IMM. Like there's a ton of that was just in Italy too. Did you attend that or?
This year, I've attended a few and loved them. But again, as I'm getting older, and my car's not on the road currently, I've got some work that I need to do to her. But yeah, no, I mean the next year's in I think next year's here, isn't it? Or is it no somewhere else? But I think every five it's in the UK.
Right.
Definitely worth doing. Definitely worth doing because it's again just a huge community of people coming together and just kind of letting their hair down and having fun and celebrating. For me, the greatest the little car in the world, And we were really lucky. I mean, in terms of geography, where I am now, my home, I'm literally 20 minutes from where John Cooper used to live and have his
Wow.
garage on the south coast. And in 1990, I went and knocked on his door in my mini and said, "We're doing this thing called the Italian job. We just really love some, if there's anything you can do to help us, that'd be great." I was really cocky, really cheeky because he had to be. And he
Yeah.
really was. And he was the loveliest man. He was an engineering genius, but he was also just a really lovely man. He said, "Whatever I can do to help, I'll do it." The next thing I
Wow.
know, I get a letter from Rover, which were the makers of the then, from 1990, they made a new limited edition Mini Cooper, and production carried on all the way through with Rover in the UK until 2001, as you know, when it ended at Longbridge.
Right.
And it was a letter from their press and PR people saying, "We'd love to get involved. Mr. John Cooper's told us all about you. How can we support?" And we were blown away, mate. And that was the man, John Cooper, and his son Mike, who is still a big friend and a big supporter of the Italian job, and then John's grandson Charlie, who is now an ambassador for Modern Mini. And yeah, for me, the fact that there are cars with the name Cooper and John Cooper Works, because he was an F1 constructor champion, John Cooper, 59 and 60. He was an absolute giant. Um, and the fact
Yep.
that even today his name is on the back of these cars means a lot to people, to all of us. I think where I've got Mini Cooper on my car. It's a big thing, and that legacy I think hopefully lives on in a different way. It's a different car. It's a modern motor car, and
Hmm.
everything else. But I mean that there's a bit of John Cooper and the Cooper family name still in there, and I love that. I really do love that.
Yeah, I do too, and I think the modern Mini gets a lot of hate from the classic Mini community for generally, but I've always owned Minis, whether it's a classic or new. I've had pretty much all the new Mini generations, and I think they do. And I worked for a Mini dealership here for a long time, or not a long time, a couple of years. And I think they do a good job. Like all the events that they threw, it's always the first thing is they talk about John Cooper and the history of the Mini. And I think they did a good job. If people actually owned one, they can see, or owned both rather, they can see the similarities and how they really tried to kind of keep that heritage alive. And I think it did create a whole new group of the new modern minis, whether they even knew classic mini was a thing or not. There is such a strong group and bond between the new mini community, just like the classic mini community. So yeah, I agree with that. I get you know jokes all the time about that, but it's true. It's true.
I like the fact there's a bit of banter. If you don't like a car because you don't like a car, then that's absolutely fantastic. That's your choice, your prerogative.
Yeah.
Just like I don't want to be criticised because I like a mini. I don't mind if someone doesn't like it. That's cool, but not because of this. This sometimes this vitriolic debate continues, and you're absolutely right. I mean, in 1991, we had two guys from the West Country come on the Italian job. One was called Mark, one was called Dave. Fast forward 30 years, Dave became the Mini UK director. So he was the man at the top of the tree for Mini UK. And he
Wow.
phones and says, "What can we do? How can we support?" I said, "You're already supporting. We can just carry on." They support with some press, a bit of PR. They talk to the dealer network, retailers. Dave has now gone even bigger. He's now the president and CEO of BMW Group in Canada. And he
Man.
started my relationship with him started 30 years ago. Over he had a Mini Clubman, I had a Mini 850 saloon, and that's where that friendship started and began. And now
Yeah.
he's in Toronto and he's living a massive job there. I'm imagining just must be a huge role. And it all started, over a silly, we were kids, 18, 19 years of age, and those stories are stories. I've met people back in 1990 that I call friends today, Mike. That we've shared so many beers in German beer kellers or Austrian, I mean, and France and Paris, and we got stuck in the riots in Paris one year. We were coming back because the French love to protest. They really are fantastic at protesting. Nothing to do with us, but just protesting about stuff. And we were caught in Paris. So we're getting worried phone calls from families saying, we're all okay. It's okay. We're getting through."
Yeah.
They see the meetings. They say, "No, you go." So it
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
just amazing, just amazing.
Wow, that's fantastic. I love it. I love to hear the stories, and so that kind of brings me to my next topic is, what other kind of memorable moments? I'm sure there's hundreds, thousands of them, but is it the little things like that? There's just what sticks out in your mind of some of the most memorable moments throughout the Italian job.
You have to remember the United Kingdom. Our summer is kind of like 3-4 weeks maximum. It's not like California. So our event always took place end of October, beginning of November. So it was kind of like the end of autumn and kind of winter's coming. So the weather was always inclement, always a bit rainy. Every year, John Cooper, the first 4 or 5 years, would come and stand at the end with a checkered flag, and we gave him a yellow Italian Job branded baseball cap, so with our logo on, wearing his baseball cap, and he'd wave the cars in. And he was just a legend. He'd come in and tell us stories about how Steve McQueen had gone to his house for dinner one night, and he had to tell
Wow.
Mike he had to sleep in another room because he was teaching Steve McQueen how to drive. And then you see Steve. I mean, these are incredible stories. Or how he was in Italy with Enzo Ferrari, and Enzo Ferrari and John Cooper had his minis. This is early on, before we knew
Yeah.
him, obviously. And Enzo Ferrari, you must know the story. Said, "Let my engineer take your mini for a drive," because Enzo Ferrari, it's all about style, it's all about chic, and it's all about lines. Where the mini is just a box with a wheel in each corner and a transverse engine, and boom. And the engineer took I forget the engineer's name for this story, but the engineer took the car away and disappeared for hours, came back, and he whispered something to Enzo Ferrari. And Enzo Ferrari said to John Cooper that, if it wasn't so ugly, he'd love this car. So mechanically and from a performance perspective, his Mini was like, fantastic. And so, yeah, having John Cooper involved with Italian was amazing. And many years later, his son gave us John's yellow baseball cap to auction, and we auctioned it off. And this was a really old, tatty, yellow baseball cap that John Cooper had owned and obviously had signed. And we auctioned it, and we raised nearly £2,000 just with this one piece of merchandise. So real
Wow.
generosity on the Italian job. And yeah, and so many things. Getting onto the rooftop test track in Turin, and if you've seen the film The Italian Job, where they go around the circuit getting chased by the police, and Charlie Kroger says, "Come on, don't hang around. We can't be up here all day. We've got to get off this thing." So we went up there the first time in '99. So that was almost 10 years, well, the ninth of the Italian Job, and it was just the most amazing thing. And it really is just spectacular. And we've got photos and video of us flying around this rooftop test track, and we had a police escort from the Turin police, and then the police came up and they put their cars through the paces as well. These are Italian police cars going around. It's a totally different concept. And getting onto Fiorano was fantastic, which was the Ferrari's little private test track in Fiorano, just outside their factory.
Right.
And we were doing lots of events on a kind of a bit of an area away from the main track. There were some challenge cars going around the circuit, making lots and lots of noise, as they do. Like most things in life, things that make the most noise make the least difference. Things that make the most difference make the least noise. That's us, the Italian Mini, the Italian job Minis. And so when the challenge cars went into their pits to pit and to for lunch, we were allowed to go out on the circuit. We were just going, organise the parade laps, and all the mechanics came out of the garage, Mike, and they started looking at the Minis going around and loving us. So we definitely turn heads. And I'm just trying to think. We've been to so many amazing places. Driving through the centre of the cobble streets of Florence, and then we had the Florentine flag throwers escorting us in, and we always try and meet up with them. So in Florence, there's the Florence Mini Club. They were big guys that played a big role in the IMM this year. In Turin, there's another group, the Turin Mini Club, and there's some some amazing friendships that happen. I think one thing that stands out mainly was we had to do a gearbox rebuild for a late, I think it was a '98 Cooper, and we had a new gearbox shipped over from the UK to this area just outside of Trento. In these lovely hotels, they've got these really lovely chrome or gold effect luggage trolleys where you put all your bags and the porter carries it through. So we pinched one of those, we took it down into the garage, and we used that as the hoist for pulling the thing out. And I tell you, it works a treat. I mean, it would have been a having a hoist, but it was we padded it so that it didn't damage it too much.
Right.
But yeah. So just
handed it back a little greasy.
Yeah, a little bit of heritage there. It's taken a Cooper gearbox and an engine out off the top of it, obviously, and then it was amazing. So and the service crew always kept busy with things, everything from can you tune my radio, which they don't tend to do because that's not an essential thing, to always lots of CV joints. Kind of people get a bit nervous when they're driving so far. They hear a little squeak or a little noise, but that's part and parcel of driving the Mini, isn't it? It's just one of those things that, a hose disappears and suddenly you've got fuel kind of just flying out of the car. So it's we finished the event a few times in London at the Royal Lancaster, which is the hotel that was used in the film as well. And what used to be underneath Mini Park Lane. So Park Lane is it's Mayfair. It's a real swanky part of London. It's where, I don't know, Fifth Avenue or Central Park in New York kind of thing. It's on the Monopoly board. It's one of the most expensive properties on the Monopoly board. So to give you an idea, there's a Mini dealership there, and their car park was the car park that was used in the film as well, where Charlie Croker returns from prison to collect his Aston Martin, and he says to the guy, I shot a lot of tigers. That was filmed in this car park, so we've taken the Minis there as well. So,
wow.
And that's thanks again. Mini UK have been fantastic supporters of the Italian job over the years, as were Rover Group back in the day. So, it's I mean, I think I need to write a book one day about all the stories. We've had we had a long time some Mini people from Arizona come over, from the Arizona Mini Owners Club would come over, and they were fantastic. And of course, they would fundraise for children's charities in Arizona, not in the UK. It makes no sense. And that's one of the things that we can do. So if anyone's listening to this podcast, I think I'd like to do that Italian job event, come over. We can try and find a way. If it's a classic Mini, try and find a classic Mini. We've got arrangements with modern Minis as well in Italy if you need to. So kind of a fly drive. And you'll be supporting charities, children's charities in your local area. So that's kind of a nice, I think, and we've supported charities all over the world as a result of that. But that's a nice thing as well. Right. I think it makes a difference. So I hope that happens. We'd love to see some more teams.
Yeah, that would be great. I was going to ask you kind of to explain a little bit. There's a team, so it's you would like a driver or co-pilot, and each car represents a different charity, or you can kind of pick your own charity and do your own kind of fundraising throughout. How does that kind of work?
UK teams, we've got a nominated charity that we work with, and here it's Buttle. And they're a brilliant organisation in that they provide these grants for families that are in crisis. There's a huge cost of living crisis sweeping the UK, currently and has been for a long, long time. And that gives us a real focus. And in exchange, they give us some help and support with press and marketing, and in other ways as well. And it's great because it means that if we've got a team from the centre of London or a team from, let's say, Cornwall, the money they raise will be spent on grants in their own areas. So it's really, really hyper local and hyper relevant. And that makes a difference. See, the motto we've always had with the Italian Job is that we raise money for children in a fun way. And so
Yeah.
it's always a children's charity. And having the kind of a centralised national charity that we support with local connections makes a real difference. They provide a lot of supporting materials, fundraising materials, and they're amazing. And it's great to see afterwards. Every team gets an impact report. So how the money that you, Mike, have raised in Cornwall is helping umpteen families experiencing difficulty, and how the money has been used and made a difference. So that's a big edge. That's a big advantage and a big plus. And yeah, and as I say, if we have teams from the States, then we'll they'll be supporting them and fundraising for the charities there. But we've got a guy who did it iffy, who's a BA engineer but out of New York. He's bought an Innocenti, having done the Italian Job. He's actually got an Innocenti there. So I think it's the Innocenti Mini Club of America. I'm a member as well. Just because it's nice to look at lovely cars, lovely photos of Innos all over the world.
Yeah. Can't get enough of mini photos, I guess. So if somebody wants to do this wherever they are in the world, is there where can they go to get more information, sign up? Because there's one coming up in October this year, right? You had is this the first year back from the pandemic, or was last
Yeah,
year?
well, it's the first year back since the pandemic, and it's our first year under Brexit. So we're kind of all a little bit concerned, Mike, as to what's going to happen driving UK cars in, what were once brothers and sisters across the water. I'm sure that won't be a problem, but it's our first year back since the pandemic, and we're just obviously I've been chomping at the bit to try and. They've got some
Yeah.
fantastic routes, but we have a really nice website. It's just italianjob.com. Just italianjob.com. All the information's there, and we would love to hear from some of your listeners and some of your regulars. And again, for us, just the fact that it's mini, so classic or modern, bring your own, or we'll help you try and find one or rent one or whatever the case may be. We'd love to see that. We'd love to see the impact of the Italian Job touching children's charities and organisations that really need support in towns and cities across the States as well. So that would be a lovely thing to see if we could. And we've got spaces, and we'd love to see more teams. All they've got to do is
Awesome.
just bring a car, big smiles, and that's it, really. So it's all explained on the website, but it's all there, yeah.
Awesome. I'll put it in the show notes as well, so people can link to it if they're interested. Find out more information there. Any other kind of future plans for the Italian Job? Is there any sort of side project or growth that you want to kind of expand upon it?
I'm I'm now not towards the end of my business life, but I'm kind of at a point now where I'm quite happy to take a bigger step back from business, and I want to put more
Right.
effort into the Italian Job because I absolutely love it, Mike. I mean, it's not just the mini or the fact it's Italy or the fact that we're doing so much good. I just thoroughly enjoy it every single
Right.
second. And I was privileged in 2020 to be given an award, an honour by Her Majesty the Queen, which is an MBE
Wow.
for services to charity. And I feel like I'm a fraud because it's never been a chore, it's never been a challenge, it's never been a trial. Any of this has always just been huge fun. I involve all my friends.
Yeah.
I met my wife on the Italian Job in 1991. She was taking part with a friend of hers,
Whoa.
and that's how this is mini. This kind of these things happen, and it's I've got two beautiful daughters. One drives a Fiat 500, the other one drives a French car, which I can't possibly name. So somewhere I've gone wrong. Genetics have gone a bit crazy, but yeah, the Italian. I'd love to expand. I'd love to do more than one event a year. I'd like to. Years ago, I did some research on all the cars that were used in the James Bond movies, and thinking maybe we should do something, based upon Bond theme or the French Connection, the famous Gene Hackman film, and all two CVs or some kind of other cars. We do
Hmm.
another few events in the year, 1 day events in the UK, just again fundraising and bringing people together. We do one called the Mile of Minis. We're never ever hitting the Mile of Minis. We'd love to, but we'd need 500 for that. But that's a good fun day out. We've done treasure hunt events and scattergun events in France. In London at the moment, I'm not trying to be political here, but we've got this ridiculous mayor who's imposing all these restrictions on cars with emission zones and making it almost impossible. So what I'm going to try and do with some friends, I'm going to remove all branding. Obviously, I don't want to bring the Italian into disrepute. Just to do a bit of guerrilla marketing and just to get up there in central London and kind of honk our horns and make a bit of a mess, not in a nice way, um,
Right.
and just let people know. Because I remember when we drove through Rome, and I kid you not, Mike, there were busloads of tourists looking at the Colosseum, and then we go past, we go toot toot, and they all turned around and started looking at us as if, you know. And yeah, social media must have spread us around the world instantly. But it's yeah, just I tell you, even if I'm feeling really really angry or annoyed, which doesn't happen often, I jump in the Mini, and then I don't know if it's the fumes that hit me first, but you know, it's that kind of that smell of the car that you know what I'm saying. There's nothing
Oh
like
yeah.
it, is there? You
Yeah,
know,
I'm
it's
losing my mind. I work from home. My Mini's been down for 6 months, and I just, I don't have the parts to fix it yet. So I'm almost there. So I'm itching to drive it. It's just something about it, because not driving a, whatever car around just that doesn't necessarily do it. Something about that Mini. It's like you said, maybe it's the fumes.
you always sit there in traffic, and whether we live in a cold climate here, but when it that needle, the temperature gauge, always creeps up, and all, up until now, every time the fan has kicked in, and I can hear it, and I go, "Oh, thank God for that," because I just dread the fact of bubbling over and heating up, you know. So, but that's I think, and I think for me, the thing that I love the most is never really knowing for sure if when I leave somewhere, no matter how far I'm going, if I'm going to get there without some kind of mechanical breakdown. And that kind of makes me kind of keeps, and I wouldn't want that in my modern car for business if I was having to go to a
Right.
meeting. But in that, it's just, and now I can phone and say, I'm going to be late, I've broken down, I'm waiting for recovery, bang. So, yeah, I think
It's
people,
the part of that too is when I leave, is it going to break down and can I fix it? Because modern car I probably won't be able to, but I've at this point probably have touched every nut and bolt on my Mini, so it's like at least I would know what. So like the rally I went on, I had all my pretty much all my tools, a little mini jack, and so it was fun. It was definitely a blast to kind of experience that.
broke down. The mechanic start. I had no tools with me. I'd lost my fuel from my fuel pump. The fuel hose had just withered, so I was just fuel flying out. And all it
Oof.
needed to be was to be reconnected and have the Jubilee clip tightened. And I had no tools to do it. But this guy stopped and I said, "Oh, thanks ever so much for stopping, Frank man." And he went, "Listen, if it had been a Vauxhall Astra or a Ford Fiesta, I wouldn't have bothered. But as it was a classic Mini, but it's it kind of it just yeah, it's kind of like people that buy puppies to go and meet people. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's a conversation piece. I stopped
Right.
in. I live near a town called Brighton on the south coast. You look at it's a really lovely buzzy city. I stopped in the centre of town in my Mini, and before I could open my door was open, and I thought, "Geez, what's going on?" And I got out of the car, and there was an old guy there, and I said, "Old guy, older than me," and he said to me, "Tell me about your Mini, son." And I thought, so he obviously had Minis, and he was just kind of like tripping down memory lane and wanted to hear about my Mini,
Right.
and just yeah, and we had a lovely conversation, and that's the sort of thing it does. I think it just makes people smile, doesn't it?
Yeah, it
But
does.
I'm sorry, I could talk for hours about my love affair with the Mini. Honest to God.
Well, I that's why I started this podcast. So, Freddie, you've listened to a few episodes before?
One from where was it now with Mike? It must have been at one of the Himley Hall, perhaps.
Oh,
Uh,
yes, yes.
yeah,
Yeah, Mike and Mike.
Mike
Yeah.
Guido. Yeah, and then there was
So,
another one. Yeah, sorry.
yeah, and Mike at the Hemley Hall, and I do a little something at the end called the Patty Probe, and it's just fun mini questions. I'm trying to add some new ones, but usually, we ramble on about them. So feel free to elaborate if you want. So if you're interested, I might know this question already, but what's your favorite mini variant?
Many. When I was growing up, the 1275 GT, which isn't, as you know, isn't a it's a variant on its own. It's not a Clubman. We'll just call the
Right.
1275. The 1275 is the variant, and that was a really hot and quick because it was 1275, and most others were 850s or 1,000, unless you were
Right.
lucky to have an S. I guess the that would have been the one because it had the vinyl sunroof, not the vinyl, it had the vinyl roof. It had the kind of it made it look like the black and gold trim and lettering down the side as well. So there were various different colours. Never been a huge fan of the Clubman until I owned one because you had bucket loads of space to play with the engine. So much room. You could almost get
Yeah.
in there and do things. So I think the 1275 GT was an early one. Obviously, the Innocenti, although I don't know if that's a variant, it's just the um, made under license by Lambretta, effectively in the north of Italy
Mm.
for British Leyland for the European market. The Mini Moke has always been something like you. It's definitely on my bucket list. Only here, I think I'd use it 3 days a year, kind of thing. But then we have got a family home in Italy, and I could take it there, and it would be
There you go.
perfect, absolutely
There you
perfect.
go.
And
I
then, Mike,
think
we'd
so.
meet in Naples, and we'd drive the Amalfi Coast in the Mini Moke. That would be the scariest thing we've ever done, but it would be the most amazing,
It would be epic.
stunning coastline. So yeah, Mini Moke,
That
I would
would be
absolutely
epic.
love,
Yes.
and a pup. I've always liked a mini pickup and the van. I have to say as well. So yeah, I'm kind of fairly traditional. I
Just
wasn't
all of
crazy.
them.
Yeah, I mean, I thought if you were talking about was it the mini Piccadilly Park Lane, the Mayfair, the Chelsea, um, they did the Equinox and all of that. They were kind of more
Right.
trim and finish kind
Right.
of differences. I felt, and I love the RSP, which was that first kind of Bitzer that was made in 1990. The Rover Special Projects, red steering wheel,
Mm. Oh,
body
right.
coloured.
Right. Right.
And they were kind of made with. I think in the factory they said they called them a Bitzer because there was a Bitzer this and it was a Bitzer that, and they would take the sunroof from a Land Rover Discovery. That will do. So
Yeah.
fantastic, yeah. And that's what I love about the Mini in those days. Every car was a Friday afternoon car, which for us means it was a kind of like Friday afternoon. Quick, let's get it done and go. Always so many problems, but it was yeah, just beautiful. And yeah, no, I mean, yeah, there's so many. But yeah, I think the older, the pickup. Love the pickup. The look of the pickup is properly, um, yeah, just a bit kind of macho and lovely. The van as well. Not really functional vehicles to be fair nowadays. But and the Moke. So if I won the lottery tomorrow, I would fill one half of my garage with beautiful minis,
Yeah.
without a
Hundred
shadow of a doubt.
percent.
And
100%.
already. I know the colours. I know the trim. I wouldn't do anything silly like jackknife 5-speed gearboxes. That's kind of like, why would you do that? Just have a fifth gear. You don't need it. Um, I'd love the range of a twin tank as well that they used to have,
Right.
which were amazing. Yeah, we many years ago we had a team in the Italian job and he had a twin tank I could see that his boot was opened. It wasn't quite shut, so we were at a certain checkpoint. So I just thought, helpfully, I'll just go and twist the handle, push the boot shut, and close it. And as I did that, the car switched off because all the crap he had in the back of his car was pinching the fuel lines. So yeah, it just caused his
Oh
car to
no.
cut out. It was starving his car of petrol. So those are things that don't happen on modern cars, do they? Closing the door, closing the boot wouldn't cause your car to stop. So yeah, just
That's
we always
funny.
used to do a magnet test as well. So we'd just see how much of the roof was actually metal and how much of it was kind of filler because so many of these cars have been adapted and I don't know what you think. Do you like? I've never been a fan of the de-seamed minis. Where they take the seams off because they save a ton of weight, but
Yeah.
I just don't think it doesn't look like the Mini.
So I'm very torn. I'm very torn because I picked up a 1967 Austin Cooper S. It's a shell, but it has the engine, the subframes, all it has pretty much all the bits. It's a big project. But apparently it was a racer here, the original California car. I'm trying to find the racing history, but the guy who owned it did the vertical D-seam. And when I saw it, I was like, oh, damn. And then I was like, but it's a Cooper S, who cares? And then I started looking at the mini sprints, which the ones that have at least the bumpers and the roof gutter, and they're the vertical DCM. So it's would I want it if it was my choice? No, not necessarily, but I think I can make it work. And it's like I said, it's love hate. All de-seamed, it kind of looks like a bubble, and not for me. But yeah, that's a tough
Weight
one.
off the car, isn't it? It's a lot of weight, so I get why they do that. But yeah, I met a guy that he designed the interior of the ERA Mini Turbo,
Mm,
which was when and if you ever driven in one, I had a friend from Liverpool that had one.
no,
Mini Mike, his name is, and it was a super quick car,
it's a good
super
name.
quick. Yeah, well, yeah, he's auto electrician, so he knows what he did. But this car was super
Wow.
fast, and it
Yeah,
had a
those
really
are
lovely
super
kind of
cool.
padded leather. Yeah, I don't know how many are left, but yeah, those are super fast, too quick, really. To be fair, but yeah, just well, I had an automatic Mini once that I wanted to change to a manual because this wasn't getting on with the auto. You put it in gear, then you wait 2 or 3 seconds, and suddenly the car would lurch, and it was kind of at lights. It was no, I was trying to be, it was never any good. So we changed it in one afternoon from an auto to a manual. That's
Wow.
how quick you. Yeah, it's all just yeah. And those are the little things that I drove in auto, drove out manual, and I love that. And tiny little steering wheels, really short gear stick, and then proper loud, silly in-car entertainment system, so that it just kind of makes the whole thing vibrate.
I just thought of this question to add to the
Yeah,
Patty Probe from our conversation, and maybe I know the answer for you already, but I think this would be a good one going forward. But what's your some of your favorite mini movies or mini related kind of shows?
movies definitely the Italian Job.
Right.
I'm kind of also I kind of like the remake, the 2003 version with Mark Wahlberg and the F. Gary Gray version. Don't mind that so much. Although yeah, I mean it's a totally different film, of course. Goodbye Pork Pie, another famous mini film from New Zealand. Um, and there's so much. I mean, you know, just evolving that a little bit. The soundtrack to the Italian Job film was by Quincy Jones, who is a huge name in the world of music, and that's a really good album. If you've ever listened
Yeah.
to it, it's a really really nice album, and I found it on vinyl back in 1990. And I paid £25 for it back then. And then of
Wow.
course it's been digitally remastered, and then Universal Music owned the rights, and they gave us permission to use the music, which was lovely.
Right.
So yeah, mini events. There's so many. There's so many different things. So, it's in the UK. We're lucky. We've got some really good clubs. There's a British Mini Club do a fab job. Himley Hall was there. There's Dave Hollis and his crew, AD and loads of great supporters there. That's a really really fantastic mini club there. And trying to get to those, the start of the mini year in the UK is Stoneleigh, which is there. It's an indoor mini show because it's so cold. That's in the north of England as well. So, well, it's actually more Midlands than the north, but it's still really, really cold. And that kind of heralds the start of the mini season for the UK because it all going to go quiet from September or late September time. There's a famous kind of bikers cafe just on the outskirts of central London called the Ace Cafe. Every year, we've got to resurrect this. Every year, we would take it over one night. They have a mod and mini night, so it was scooters and minis, and then they let us do an auction and
Right.
fundraise there as well. So they're brilliant people as well. So there's so many different events. I mean, there's another the North Coast 500, which is a route around the top of Scotland, which would be lovely to do. But that's a 10-hour drive for me. No,
Wow.
nothing compared to your 3,000 miles, Mike. But I mean, it's a good 600 miles from me to start to get there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so and I would just love to take my back to Milan, back to its birthplace, and yeah, just go on the one thing the French do really well are the route nationales. They're little kind of quiet roads, not the motorways, but their main roads are amazing, and you can cross the whole of the country. It takes a bit of time, but it's super smooth. I always used to know that I would, if I was a passenger at the time, I'd traveling from France to Italy, you'd know because going into the tunnel in France, it was super smooth. Then you start getting a bit bumpy, and then all of a sudden, okay, we're in Italy now because it's bumpy as hell. And in the south of Italy, we were in Caserta 2 years ago near Naples. They have potholes bigger than the cars, so we
Oh
had to be
no.
really
Yeah.
careful. Yeah, but that was that we were there at the UNESCO World Heritage Site at the Reggia di Caserta, which was a fantastic palace, which is modelled on Versailles in France. So we got to park all our cars outside, and we sent drones up for footage. We had the 10 millionth modern Mini there as well with us, sent down by Mini UK.
Wow.
So
Oh wow, that's cool.
that was really lovely. Yeah. So no, it's been an adventure, and hopefully many more adventures to come. Mike. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, man, Freddie, I appreciate you coming on. We'll have to have you on again for some, updates later on, and anything else that you want the people to know. I'm gonna put the website italianjob.com for those that want to sign up and join in. Anything else?
so visit us on Facebook. We are facebook.com the Italian Job Event. We always post lots of photos, modern and classic minis, and we welcome all good humoured and amusing comments, whether they're good, bad, or ugly. And we love to encourage people to share their photos of their minis as well. But yeah, Mike, thank you so much for the chance to speak to you, to tell
Of
your
course.
listeners a bit about our little thing called the Italian Job. And yeah, long live the mini and that passion for it, because and hopefully one day we'll meet. And I think we should do it in Amalfi and and in a mini moke. I'll get hold of a moke and I'll meet you there, and
Let's
we'll do
do
the
it.
Amalfi coast. Yeah, from
Let's do
Salerno
it.
all the way down.
Let's
Fantastic.
do
No, we'll
it.
do it. 100%. Cool.
All right, guys. We'll catch
Lovely.
you on the next one.